So it's like when you hear things that trigger that incident, you are put back into that fight mode.
You're thrown like back right into that moment. Yeah.
And you're ready to kill. And it just like, it sucks to feel that way because you're like, I don't want to live with this rage. This isn't normal to me. This isn't what I want. And so from there, I went to therapy and started my transition, my journey of healing and all of that. And this event was such a blessing in disguise because it's made me such a healthy person today.
Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Podcast, where soulful entrepreneurship and holistic mind-body wellness meet to help you heal, discover your soul's purpose, and change the world. I'm your host, Gabby Ortega, entrepreneur, psychology expert, social media maven, and soulful leadership coach. And it's my mission to empower you into becoming the light leader you're meant to be. Each episode will be diving deep into topics that will help you gain personal mastery over your healing and mind-body wellness, while also giving you practical tips and tools to help you create, market, and scale a heart-centered business around your soul's purpose and life mission. Whether you're in the beginning of your self-awakening journey or a seasoned inner work god or goddess who's ready to step into their leadership as a soulpreneur, this is going to be your new favorite place to be. We know that you don't just want to feel happier and more fulfilled, but you want to deeply know yourself and powerfully step into your life's purpose while creating massive abundance around your mission. That's why I've created this podcast for you, the light leader of the next generation. Welcome home. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Conscious Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Gabby Ortega, and I am so excited to be joined today by Terra Newell. I actually met this goddess a year ago, right? Like almost a year. And yeah, like a while back. And she reached out to me on Instagram and I had no idea who she was, but she had this blue check mark and she had all this stuff going on. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll jump on. And I got to know her and I could not think of a better person to bring onto this podcast. So let me introduce her. She has been called one of the biggest badasses in true crime. I 100% agree with this. She actually killed Dirty John Meehan, a con man and serial predator, in self-defense at age 25. So for those of you who are with us, who've been with us, we are a trauma-informed podcast space. And so we are going to be diving into trauma and all of those different topics because that is also what Terra's specialty is. And let me also say that since then, she's shared her dramatic story on global platforms to raise awareness around domestic abuse. She's the heroine of episode 6 of the Dirty John podcast and has been interviewed for Dateline, Dirty John, The Dirty Truth, Dr. Oz, The Skinny Confidential, KTLA, and numerous other outlets. She's currently a life coach working alongside criminal behavior analyst Laura Richards to pass laws against coercive control in the United States, with already passing one in California. She's a total badass, you guys. Terra also loves to help others with coaching and advocating by advocating for victims. And so I am super, super honored. If you can't tell, I read that because there's so much to touch on there, as you can tell. I'm just really honored to have you here, Terra. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm actually super excited to be here today because I admire and I adore you so much. And I just was looking forward to this more so than a lot of other podcasts, to be honest, because I'm just like, I love you so much.
I love you.
And you are amazing and you are such a great healer person. And I just love how you transform your life and how you share your story too. And I just commend that because you are amazing.
Oh my God! I was not expecting you to be loving on me today. This will be like a love fest episode, I think. Thank you. That really means so much.
That's me. I always love, the energies that I align with, and if I align with you, I want to give that love back to you.
Oh, I love that. And really coming from so much trauma, so much pain and suffering and chaos, like me too, like obviously not the same situation at all. But I definitely relate to the idea of like, wow, you can go through really dark shit and come out the other end with a full heart. And I think, you know, that's something that I think we forget, that you can go through a lot of things and then go through some healing and find that heart, that love, that I want to say that just that soft energy again, you know, because trauma does sometimes make us a little bit hard.
Oh yeah. Oh, especially like afterwards when you're getting all these triggers and you're like, what's happening right now? I feel like a monster, but I know that's not who I am. Like, what is happening, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love if you could just give us a little bit, share with us your story and what you've been through, because everybody who comes onto this podcast is usually a badass leader who has like their shit together, is doing great things, but it doesn't always start out that way. So fill us in on your background.
Okay, so I am an Orange County girl. We'll just say that because I was born and raised in Orange County. I am a huge animal lover. I've always worked with animals and stuff. And my dog's with me here today.
I know, it's like, yay! Animals are always welcome on the Conscious Leadership podcast, always.
Oh, I love it. Well, he was with me in my attack. My mom married a psychopath, John Meehan, and it turned into a podcast, a documentary, several documentaries, a scripted series with Connie Britton and Julia Gardner and Eric Bana. And my dog, Cash, he was actually with me in my attack when I had to defend myself against my stepdad. So we are extremely bonded, and he's just always by my side and such a loyal dog. And well, he's an Australian Shepherd, a miniature Australian Shepherd. So those dogs are just like the most loyal, smart dogs. They know. And like, he's looking at me right now because he knows I'm talking about him, but he's been my rock, my like stone through it all, because there's been so many transitions and healing, and he's just been my consistent, you know? So animals are just so therapeutic, but in the right circumstance, because I mean, I did take a while to get to the place where I'm at today, and I had to go through a lot of steps. And in this journey, I realized that I went through so much C-PTSD, which is like childhood trauma and consistent like PTSD. And I laugh about it, but it's not funny.
I laugh about it too, and it's like, it's funny how we're like, oh, trauma, and it's like, oh. But sometimes it's like it's like just a release, and you have to laugh to not cry about it.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I feel like with my therapist, I see my therapist right now I cut down to every other week because I'm at a really good place in my life. And I feel like right now I'm just talking about random things where I'm like, well, not random things, but more so just like boundaries with people. And when I already know what to do and I'm establishing those boundaries, and like every time it's like, okay, like establish this boundary with this person. And it's like more so like, okay, give yourself a pat on the back, Terra, for doing that. And I'm like,
I love that.
Okay. But you know, she still holds me accountable, especially with relationships, because I have a tendency to self-sabotage since I've also been in a lot of like coercive, like controlled relationships, or just like bad toxic relationships where I was hit by a car. Like, I've been through so much trauma.
You were hit by a car?
Yeah, by one of my ex-boyfriends, so he was a typical like narcissistic relationship where he wasn't exactly my boyfriend, but he acted as if he was my boyfriend and never like allowed me to be his girlfriend. But that wasn't something that we talked about because, you know, they have these boundaries with some of their victims, per se, where they're able to go see other girls because they're not technically with you.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like the loophole per se of that situation.
Yeah. So I've been in toxic relationships. When I was little, I actually know who it is now who tried to kidnap me, but someone came in my room and picked me up, and my sister woke up and screamed, and he dropped me on the floor. So there's been a lot of trauma in my life.
Wow.
But the Dirty John stuff just kind of helped it all come forward and me to realize and deal with everything. And, you know, when you're realizing that you have trauma, and when you go through combative trauma like I did, and you have combative PTSD from that, then you go to like a state of hysteria sometimes, where you get like triggers, like when my dog would bark, I would freak out sometimes, and I would literally have to be away from him because I would want to strangle my dog. And like I never would do that, but you know, I had to separate myself because I was pushed to be in fight or flight mode after having to defend myself and having to kill my stepdad in my attack. So it's like when you hear things that trigger that incident, you are put back into that fight mode.
You're thrown it's like back right into that moment. Yeah.
And you're ready to kill. And it just like, it sucks to feel that way because you're like, I don't want to live with this rage. I don't, like, this isn't normal to me. This isn't what I want. And so from there, you know, I went to therapy and started my transition, my journey of healing and all of that. And this event was such a blessing in disguise because it's made me such a healthy person today.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really, really beautiful, powerful take on what you've experienced, and something that I think promotes so much of what's called post-traumatic growth, right? This idea that not that we have to find meaning or the silver lining in things, but can we create the story that we create around this experience? Can we make it an empowering one? Versus something that destroyed us or broke us, and maybe in some ways it did for a bit, but that can't be the dominant narrative, right? Like, how can we actually transmute this pain into our power, into our purpose, into helping others, serving, and through that healing ourselves even more deeply, which you do now. I mean, with this, you're doing stuff with laws. Tell me about that.
So I worked with Laura Richards and Senator Rubio with the California law for coercion. And my mom was involved too, obviously, because it was really all of my mom and mine and Tanya, but Tanya is in a different state and doing her own stuff towards helping the cause. And my mom got a hold of Senator Rubio, and we just started talking about coercion and informing her what it is. And basically it's non-abuse, but where this person is able to kind of manipulate you and kind of control you, but like with your mind more so.
So like psychological manipulation. Yeah. So it's not like outward hitting and like physical abuse that you can see, but it's like this mind control, knowing where your weaknesses are, knowing how to work you so that you are attached and like really attached to the point of like that you think then things escalate, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. And then like one case I like to give an example of, just because a lot of people have seen GOT, is when what is it, Rickoff? No, it was the guy who was with Sansa Stark in the end, that was the crazy guy, and he kidnapped Theon, and he and then he, like, whenever Theon would leave, he wouldn't be able to go because he was coerced into staying into that state. where this guy obviously like tortured and abused Dion, but just like the mental abuse that he did on him was coercive control.
Mm-hmm. And we see so much of this. I was just watching the NXIVM documentary with like cults and people who use that same kind of coercion, which is why cults are not necessarily like, I think there's some kind of thing that there's no law against cults or something like that, but that because there's no law because they're not like beating people outwardly or whatever. It's that they're doing more of this coercive stuff, and it looks like people are making their own independent choice to be there, but really what's happening is a tremendous amount of gaslighting, manipulation, and what we now call coercion, which is just as bad as physical, being tied with chains, being chained in a basement and locked in a door, physical abuse, things like that, is someone manipulating your mind and making you feel so psychologically dependent on them that you're willing to tolerate and see abuse as normal or even healthy or even like you deserve it. It's going to make you a better person. And that's like, that's, I think, the worst, most insidious form of abuse, because it is masked with you thinking that you're making these choices, that you're empowered in your decisions, but really you're not.
Yeah. And then a lot of these times, these guys are, I don't want to say more dangerous. I want to say like equal, but they can be more dangerous because when you decide to leave and they lost control of you, that's when they lose it. And that's when you're more acceptable to be killed in these relationships. Like when you leave, that's when they come after you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, I don't want to say everyone does that. But that is like if you're a psychopath or a sociopath or even sometimes a narcissist, sometimes there is a snap.
Yeah, absolutely. Because ultimately that control is what keeps everything together. And then when they feel like they've lost that control, that's when you're expendable. That's when, if I can't have you, nobody can have you type of situation.
Oh, yeah.
And we see this, we see this all the time with women in domestic violence situations. What really makes me so fucking pissed is when people go, well, she could have just left. And it's like, ooh, don't get me started. I'm going to like lose it because like you have no idea what this kind of control is like when you feel and part of that, the coercive control is that there's isolation, right? They get you in, there's love bombing, there's all of this, like, I'm the best thing that's ever happened to you. Trust me, trust me. I know what's best for you. And then there's the, your mom, whoever you're closest with, suddenly there's a problem. Ooh, your mom is controlling you, huh? Ooh, your best friend has a lot to say about this thing. What do you, seems like she's really this. Or lies, straight up lies about things that are happening to get you isolated and away from the people closest to you who are going to say, this guy's bad trouble or this girl is bad trouble. Like isolation. And then they sometimes even manipulate things so that you're financially dependent on them. And then it's all over. Then you're like totally dependent. And then all of a sudden they turn. And there's a point in time when they turn and then it's too late. And it's like, you're in there and you don't have anybody to talk to. You're isolated. Now it's like, oh, I should make this work. I'm embarrassed because I kind of told all these people to fuck off and that they didn't know what they're talking about. And now it's not good. And now I have to make it work. And then before you know it, it's like 10 years down the road and you're being regularly abused, because it doesn't start off with like big things. Usually it's like small incidents. And then it's like a lot of like, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I never meant that. And then another bigger thing, and then a bigger thing, and then a bigger thing. And then you decide to leave, and then a snap. And that is, if you look at the research, that is usually the trajectory for those kinds of personalities, sociopaths, psychopaths, and sometimes even, extreme narcissists.
Yeah, like a true narcissist. Like people like throw around the word narcissist, I feel like, too loosely.
Thank you. There's criteria, you guys, for there's narcissistic qualities that someone can have, and there's full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, which let's not convolute the two.
Oh yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, you can have narcissistic traits because everybody has narcissistic traits.
Yeah.
And that's normal because you have to find the balance of having too much empathy, you know, and having boundaries is good. And sometimes that comes off as having a narcissistic trait when, you know, that's actually having a healthy balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And well, I think that sometimes like you obviously need to check your ego and be like, okay, like, am I coming off like too much? Like, is this my ego talking? And like always hold yourself accountable. But that's actually what helps you from not being a true narcissist, is having like empathy or just like having a conscious.
Yeah. I think, and I agree with you that there's healthy narcissism, right? There's narcissism that we have that keeps us alive. Like if we, like, it's like, don't go down that dark alley at night by yourself. Bad things might happen. That's like technically narcissism because you're like thinking about yourself only and you're like focused on what's going to happen to you. But like, that's healthy narcissism. We need to have like, be real with ourselves a lot of times and kind of be like, okay, what's going on with me to be healthy? But that key element is that, you know, that empathy, you feel things for other people, you do identify with other people's emotions and struggles, and you can put yourself in someone else's shoes. But we all have narcissistic traits, and that's like a part of life. But definitely let's not confuse the two, because, sometimes with the personality disorder group, it can be a dangerous group of individuals who don't necessarily know that they're even dangerous.
Oh, yeah. Well, part of like narcissism, I feel like they don't know that they're a narcissist, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, you can't argue with them either because they're always going to try to win that conversation. And you're like, okay, well, but with a lot of my clients, I have to kind of tell them, well, first of all, I'm not a therapist and I'm not a licensed therapist. I am a coach and I am a trauma and toxic relationship coach. So I let them know that I am a coach. I am not licensed, but I do know a heck of a lot more than a lot of therapists out there, I believe.
Yeah. And you've also lived through it. So the idea that you can communicate in a much different way to your clients because you're like, yeah, like I've lived this. I understand what's going on in your head, what's going on in your body. Like that is so key to, I think, the healing that happens with clients in any context.
Right. Yeah. And I think that I've done so much research and books and just like everything. Like it's so funny. Like someone talked to me about cluster B personality disorders, and she was like, "Oh, my ex was a cluster B personality disorder." And I was like, "Well, that statement is confusing to me because which one is he?" And then she asked me if I knew about the cluster B personality disorder. And I said, well, I am very familiar with a lot of DSM diagnoses and, from the handbook. Yeah. But I don't know them all. I'm going to be honest, but I am very familiar with the cluster B section because that is what I've had experience in. Yeah. But to say if someone has a problem with a psychopath or a borderline personality person, it's so different how you deal with those people, because I feel like borderline people, they don't really choose to be that way a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Or like bipolar.
It usually stems from experiencing a lot of, like, a significant amount of trauma. It's how you develop that. Actually, like these personality disorders, I want to point out, I'm not an expert in them as well. Usually you have people who specialize. I know some things, but a lot of this stuff stems from trauma. And this is all about trauma, right? Like, so the narcissistic personality disorder, the borderline personality disorder, they all come from the psyche splitting and going into defense mode, because as children, there's stuff going on that is overwhelming, painful, abusive. And so for us, our personality is like, our brain doesn't know what to do with all of that. And so okay, I got to split and either don't have any feelings or connection at all. We cut off the empathy, because if we feel feelings. We're going to annihilate. We're going to die because it's too overwhelming. We're experiencing too much pain in our childhood. So that's where narcissism comes from, or narcissistic personality disorder, because it's like, for survival, I cannot connect with the individuals in my life, my caregivers, because they are dangerous and they cause me pain. So I'm not going to feel anything. That sucks, right? And then to grow up as an adult and not be able to feel what that empathy is like, which is beautiful. It's painful, but it's also like what makes us human, is really, I feel like, so sad. And then we have borderline, which is a different version of that, which is like the attachment is so ruptured and, from the chaos that happens to us early on, that we've split into this like all good, all bad kind of persona. And we're so worried about people leaving us and abandonment and rejection, that the way that we end up behaving is it just doesn't serve us. But really what's ultimately underneath it is a childhood of just rejection and abandonment and abuse and wounding. And, that's where the brain just develops in a certain way to protect you.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what happens. And then we have these DSM diagnoses to better understand it. But I think there's also a stigma against these personality disorders. Obviously, bad things happen sometimes with people who have personality disorders, but it all is around trauma. And that's the big message. It's like trauma begets trauma begets trauma begets. It keeps going and going and going and going in cycles until we stop it,
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, to be honest, if I have a client too, and they're dealing with one or the other, with a narcissist, I'm like, okay, no contact, like hold your boundaries, this and that. But if we're working with someone that's borderline, I'm like, you have to have boundaries, but you still have to let them know that they're loved and that, that you're still there for them. And you just have to figure out how to have a healthy relationship where, when they lash out, that it's not anything to do with you, but they still have that empathy. And, so I think that we just have to figure out healthy boundaries with those ones and establish no contact and everything else with the true narcissists, psychopaths, and, the antisocial ones.
Do you work with a lot of those clientele?
I have a few clients that, one is borderline and one is bipolar, but I have a lot of clients where their family members are borderline or bipolar, or say their dad is a narcissist, and he may not be that bad of a narcissist. Like, there's different levels of narcissism. He's probably like a benign one, but I have to like help her hold boundaries with him and realize like when he does something that it's nothing to do with her, and then get her to a healthy place where we just have a healthy balance of that. And she's, because people still want to have relationships with their parents. And I just want to make that able to happen with healthy boundaries.
I love that. And I love that you work with clients that I think, I've been around other I'm a therapist, not really working and practicing in therapy anymore, but I was a lot in those spaces and in the psychology space with some psychologists and things and colleagues and people I know. And it's interesting because, you have one concept of healers in this mental health space who have gone through school and are educated and have empathy and compassion. And I'm sitting in a room with people who are my colleagues, and they are basically making fun of people with personality disorders, saying things like, oh, don't see a borderline. You don't want a borderline patient. Just like whatever you do, if you see them in your application, like get them refer them out. They're so difficult. There's so much, like you don't want to work with them. Or if you get a narcissist or somebody who like seems like they're sociopathic or pathological that way, run, don't see them. They're, all these things that I'm sitting here like with a father who has borderline personality disorder. I'm like, wow, fuck you guys. That is not okay. We take an oath to do no harm and to provide service and healing for as many people as possible in the capacity as a therapist, not as a coach. And so it's kind of like, how can you say that? So the fact that you're like, you know what? No, this is who I work with. I understand. There's like, I get the trauma. I get what they're talking about, where they're coming from. I understand this population and I want to be there, even though there's a like group of trained fucking professionals who literally, I can put you in a room with 100 people. One person will say that they will work with that population. And it's the most frustrating thing as someone who survived trauma myself to be like, wow, okay.
See, I'm down to work with psychopaths because I want to understand and I want to gain knowledge, and I want to like, I feel like the more knowledge you have with something, the more you're able to help other people. You may not be helping that psychopath, but you may be helping their victims.
Mm-hmm. Oh, damn. Yes. Truth right there. So I would love to know, obviously, you know, you've gone through some really horrific traumatic stuff, like not just the Dirty John stuff, and the attack on you and your mom and all of that, but also childhood stuff. You were kidnapped, attempted kidnapping, like hit by a car, toxic relationships, abusive relationship type of situation. When did you feel like I think you said it was really at the end of the Dirty John incident, but like what moment, I guess, do you have a moment, or like, when did you realize that, you know, it was kind of time to jump into facing this stuff? Because I think that's really, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I have so much shit. I don't know when it's going to be the right time. So how did you know it was the right time?
So, I was in a relationship. I was with this person for 5 years, and it was probably like at year 3 or 4. And, you know, I was very trauma bonded to him, not because he was toxic in a sense, but because I was trauma bonded to a narcissist beforehand, and I got hit by the car, and then I met Jimmy, and then he would walk me to my car like every day, and so he became a safe person. So I was like, he was my safe net, and whenever he would leave, this relationship like started fast, and he literally moved in 2 weeks into the relationship, just like gradually, but he would stay there every day. And I didn't know how to tell him like, no, you can't stay here. And my mom didn't either. So he just like kind of came and lived with us. And he, you know, he's so nice. He is so sweet. But I started to freak out when he would leave me, because it was my safety leaving me, and I didn't feel safe unless he was there. And so there was obviously a lot of stuff that happened from that. I would get jealous, and I was not secure in my relationship. And, you know, there are a few things that he did to make me not feel 100% secure, but I'm not focusing on him. I'm focusing on me and what I needed to do. And I just realized that like, this isn't normal the way I felt. And he would also just like be like, you know, call me out for it. And, you know, I would call him out for stuff too, but like I needed to focus on myself and my healing. So I started to go to therapy and, start having more realizations of what happened throughout life. But I really never connected the dots until the incident, because I went through EMDR therapy after my attack and everything, and it kind of just connected the dots with everything.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, oh, like, I was trauma bonded to Jimmy because he made me feel safe, because I literally met him right after I was hit by a car. And then he came the day after when I was in the hospital for like the Dirty John stuff. So that was a relationship that was really hard to let go of. And when I went through EMDR, I realized like why it was so hard and stuff, and because I was trauma bonded to him, and that's really hard to let go of your safe person. And no matter like, you know, what stage they are in their life. And I'm not a narcissist. I don't want to keep this person in a cycle or anything. Like, it was literally, I was glued to him just because he made me feel safe.
Yeah.
And it's like, it took, like, he was there after my attack and he took care of me. And so like, that kind of pushed him into being my safe person, even though we weren't like technically together. Mm-hmm. And so there was 3 years that I really needed to let go of this person, and there was a limbo. And to be honest, that relationship, him holding me accountable and having those realizations in that relationship, that made me move forward in things, because you learn a lot of things from your parents. You learn a lot of things from trauma, and how you act in relationships is based on the patterns that you have learned and everything. Mm-hmm. So I brought all those unhealthy patterns into my relationship and then had those realizations.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like you wanted to, like, you found that like what was coming through for you was, you know, like prolonged trauma, like responses in the form of like, you know, little things like being like really jealous, or like being like, you know, oh my God, like insecure around the relationship or around like what was happening, because like that's how that expresses itself, that fear of like, please don't leave me, that you're my safe person, you know, like, you know, that is such a normal response to have, I think, especially after such a trauma bond of like, you wake up and this person's there to take care of you. But also sounds like he kind of was a catalyst for helping you take some responsibility over, you know, what happens next for you, you know, and that really opened up the door for your healing.
100%. Because I realized that my healing wasn't revolved around him or him being my safe person. It's everything to do with me and my relationships with other people. And, you know, trauma, especially when you're having major triggers, it's something you really need to get a hold of. And I'm laughing, but it's like, I don't want to laugh because I'm going to cry, because like, I watch TV shows and there'll be a scene where someone has like a PTSD flashback, and it's just like, there's been times where I've seen programs where this person on the show, like they're like contemplating suicide, and it's like exactly like that. It's like when you have those triggers, sometimes it brings you to a really bad place. And I feel for everyone that has triggers, because I want them to know that they can heal from those. And when they have a trigger, like when I have a trigger now, it's like, okay, notice it, it's there, and then it's moving on. And, you know, in the past that didn't happen. And with good work, doing EMDR therapy, I believe strongly in EMDR.
It's amazing.
And just like, holding yourself accountable, having like a mentor or a therapist, someone that aligns with you and actually holds you accountable though. You need someone like that in your life. And then that's how you continue to grow. And you just like, I feel like growing is just continuous. You have to just keep growing in the best way possible.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing your vulnerability with us. It's powerful, because I relate so much to that. There are times where it's so funny, I will watch like TV shows and I'll actually fast forward past like points where people are very depressed, or people are going through a really, really dark place, or they're contemplating suicide, being there, or like, you know, myself, like it's very triggering to like see that and to remember, oh my God, like, like that's so real for me still. Like it's so easily still there, you know, even though we heal, it's like we're constantly going to be triggered, and maybe triggered less over time as we do more healing, but that they'll always be there, because we've gone through shit, and that shit isn't going to erase itself from our body and mind completely. We can do all kinds of healing, but at the end of the day, we still have our memory. We still will never know, like someone could touch me in the wrong way at some random place on the shoulder, and I will go into like a full anxiety attack. Like it doesn't happen every time. I don't know what, like, it's like random, you know? And I have such deep empathy for anybody as well, like you said, who's going through triggers, who's suffering or healing from PTSD or complex PTSD, being attacked, or being in an abusive relationship, because this stuff is hard. It's really hard. And it's not you. It's not that it's taking you forever or something's wrong with you. You're going to be broken forever, anything like that. It's just hard. It's hard work, but you can get on the other end of it. And it seems like after, you've really done this healing, that things have just like taken off for you, and you're thriving and helping so many other people, which I think is just incredibly beautiful given, everything you've gone through, and now sharing that wisdom with your clients.
Well, thank you. I've always been that type of person that volunteers and feeds the homeless and just does little things for free. And I'm like, my mom would get mad at me, and I'm like, how can I help people but make a living out of it too? And so I'm just I feel like I've stepped into this place of my true self-being.
I love that. So tell us what's next for you. Do you have plans? What's coming up in the next year? Where can we find you? Where can we hang out with you? Because after you listen to this episode, I'm sure you're oh my God, I want to learn more. This person's so freaking fascinating. So where can we find you? What's going on for you this year?
So I actually have a retreat coming up April 9th through 11th, and it's a toxic relationship trauma retreat. I need people to sign up, to be honest, so that I can break even with my speakers.
You have amazing speakers. I was damn, who's going to be in this? Tell everybody.
I know. Okay, so it's Dr. Judy Ho. She's from The Doctor. She is amazing. She has lots of videos on Med Circle if you ever want to check them out. Love her so much. She is just amazing. She's a personal friend too. Then I have Dr. Judith Joseph from Dr. Oz, and she is a licensed psychiatrist, and she talks about meds with trauma and basically anything you want to know with meds.
Which is honestly, let's talk about it, because I think I'm holistic, but I also I'm pro medicine as well. We can definitely use all the tools we can get as far as I'm concerned. Everything we can get, let's take it for trauma.
Yeah. Well, I love holistic approaches too, but there was a time in my life where I had to be on PTSD medication. Same. And it was so helpful for that time period. Yeah. But when I got to a good place, let's just say I wanted to wean myself the heck off of it.
Same experience, definitely.
Yes. With, your therapist, talk to them, wean yourself off, because
don't do any self diagnosing and medicating and unmedicating or anything.
Yeah. I'm this is really where you need someone licensed for that area. And then I'm having Steffi, Superfood Goddess. She's talking about nutrition and healing the body with trauma. And she's also been in a toxic relationship, so she might give some insight on how she healed about that. Then I have my friend Lacey. She is amazing. Oh my gosh. I need to connect you guys too.
Yes, please.
She was kidnapped, and with her friend Sarah, and I think it was a gang initiation, but I don't want to say too much because this is her story. Yeah. But she is just a superwoman. She survived a kidnapping, and she speaks about healing and trauma, and just she is super into the body, and she talks about endometriosis. I don't know if I said that quite right, but she is just amazing. And she's talking about her survival story and how she healed from it, or her healing process now, because healing is a constant thing. And who else do I have? Oh, I have Anna Rose. She's doing a dating detox. I love her because she's really... Right? She's held me accountable with so many things in my personal life. Then I have Christina Rendon. She is doing guided meditations and ending it with a trauma-based meditation. Yeah. And then I'm starting the day, Saturday and Sunday, with my favorite yoga instructor, Skylar Yoga. And she is amazing. I go to yoga every single day, and she's one of my main instructors. And so because trauma lives in the body, so we need to really work with the body. Oh, and then I have Josie Charles, narcissist, sociopath awareness too, I think. But she is amazing. Evan Rachel Woods has been reposting a lot of her stuff lately because she talks about narcissism, and she has a huge page for it, but she's been on my podcast too, and she really has a lot of insight and is a great coach. So I have a lot of people.
You have like everybody, and it's like mind, body, and spirit. And like, I can't think of a better holy trifecta of trauma healing to invite into your day. Thank you for putting that together.
Thank you. I mean, if I get more people to sign up, then I would add more speakers. But I'm at the point where I'm like, let's sign up, get this healing done.
Guys, go get in on this. We'll like definitely get this out before your retreat, so we can get some people to get their hands on some tickets, because this is really, really big. Like, I saw your speakers and I was like, holy shit. It's going to be awesome, you guys.
I've literally paid like $1,400 for like retreats like this, and I'm selling it for $425 right now.
I was like, what? $425.
This is a steal.
It's amazing. So where can we get more information on signing up for this retreat and for like following you and all of that?
So you can get more information by emailing me at Terra Newell coaching @gmail.com. It is TerraNewell coaching@gmail.com. Or you could DM me on Instagram. I am Terra Newell on there, and I'm most active on Instagram. And then I also have a Twitter, Terra_Newell. And then my podcast is Time Out with Terra. You could follow on anywhere where podcasts are available.
I love it! And if you scroll back in her podcast history a little bit, you'll see our episode from a while back, which was like just when I first got started, actually, and I was so nervous to do podcasts. So I thank you for inviting me on your podcast, and thank you for joining us here and sharing about your story, your leadership, and how you've really taken such such an incredible life. And instead of allowing it to really dictate how you feel about yourself, or like in a bad way, or take you down a road where you're out of control, you really took control, and created just something so beautiful from that. And I think it's such a great mirror for to hold up to what we can do if we've gone through trauma and we decide to choose to go through the healing process, is that we can really make life work for us, not to us, and feel so much more empowered. So dive in there, you guys. It's worth it. Is it worth it to dive into the healing, even though it's painful?
Oh yeah. No, I have a client right now. She is doing EMDR, and she says it's hard right now, but she's like, but I'm processing through so much, and it's helpful. So know when you're going through that, it's helpful. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Terra. And we will leave all of Terra's information in the notes at the bottom. And join her on Instagram. She has a really beautiful community there. Go to her retreat. Go learn some stuff from some amazing people. Go get coached by her and get some support, and get more of her in your life, because she's just incredible. Thank you so much, Terra. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you. Bye.
And that's our episode for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us at the Conscious Leadership Podcast. I'm so excited. This next year, 2021, is going to be huge. We have so many guests that are coming on that you are going to love. I'm going to be doing some more solo casts and Om Therapy coaching. We have so many things rolling out for you. Retreats, another round of Ignite starting in May, another one starting at the end of the summer, a mastermind, and so many other things. So be sure to stay tuned tuned with us. On Instagram, follow me at om_therapy_coaching, and stay tuned for so much goodness coming up. As always, I would love to hear your feedback. Head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and I would love to give you a free copy of my subconscious reprogramming workbook, and that is absolutely free. Just send me a screenshot of your review and on Instagram, and I will be so happy to send that over as my gift for you. And I am sending you so many hugs, so much love, and I hope that this week you are able to find just a little bit more joy in your life. Have a good one, guys.